Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur. And in year 8, we're taking head-on 2 of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sananda Jayaseelan. 2 Bengaluru-based interviews tonight. First up is with Balakrishnan of Exfinity Ventures. On the other side of a break, we'll put the spotlight on Homelane. The former CFO of Mindtree and now the founder of Exfinity Ventures, Balakrishnan, joining us for this very special conversation here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Bala, always a pleasure chatting with you. I want to start by talking about something very interesting that I read, that you've said previously, that in your opinion, to be a successful entrepreneur, one must first be a successful storyteller. Why is that? And also, what are the other essential skills that you think an entrepreneur must possess?
I think storytelling is the most important thing any entrepreneur should have, because you may have a great product, great idea. If you're not able to articulate that well with investors, customers, the success of the startup is questionable. So I think storytelling is the most important thing. And beyond storytelling, the entrepreneur should have the passion. He should have the good team. I mean, he should hire good talent who are better than him, so that he can execute the idea which he has conceived. And I also think the entrepreneur should be flexible. I mean, you come with great ideas, but when you go to the marketplace, the requirements could be totally different. So you should have the flexibility to quickly pivot your idea and get to the new ideas. So I think any entrepreneur who is flexible, who is articulate, who has got good talent in their portfolio, I think they would be the winners.
You've had a very interesting professional journey. I want you to talk to us about your early days before you joined Infosys, and to also talk about work-life balance as an entrepreneur, as an investor. How do you really achieve that?
My personal journey has been extremely good till now. I started my career in Amco Batteries. Then I joined Infosys in '91 when they had $2 million revenue, 250 employees. When I left in 2013, they had a revenue of $8 billion, 2 lakh employees. It has been a great journey. We did the local listing, we did the international listing. I mean, it is one of the best part of my life. And after leaving Infosys, we started Exfinity Ventures, which is focused on venture capital firm, focused on B2B companies, because we believe that deep tech, high product companies can come out of India, and we wanted to support the entrepreneurs in that space. That is why we started Exfinity Ventures. It has been 3-4 years into the journey, and we had made some 17-18 investments, and we have exciting companies in our portfolio.
Give us some insights into why you decided to set up Exfinity Ventures. Is, of course, when it was started, it was one of the very few B2B funds. Now you do look at B2C as well, but why did you decide to go ahead and set up Exfinity? What sort of companies do you look at? What's your investment philosophy? Give us some insights into that.
See, if you look at the IT services industry, today it's a $180 billion industry. India has created a market leadership in the IT services. So we believe that the same success can be replicated in the Indian startup ecosystem, because we have a government which is very supportive to the startup ecosystem. We have a lot of risk capital available in India today. And also we have got good talent coming out of IT services industry. We've got knowledge on both global enterprise and also global tech. So I think the combination of all these three is creating a vibrant startup ecosystem in India. Today, India is the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world, and we clearly believe that India can replicate the success we have seen in the IT services industry in the Indian startup ecosystem. And we believe that we should be a small partner in the journey and create a very vibrant startup ecosystem in India. That is the reason we started Exfinity Ventures.
You're also different, not just in the fact that you were looking at B2B, but also that unlike a lot of other funds, you've looked at raising funds from domestic investors. Talk to us about that.
I think we believe that any vibrant startup ecosystem should have the ability to attract domestic capital. Unfortunately, in India, not much of domestic capital has come into the startup ecosystem. Most of the capital the ecosystem has taken till now is coming from a foreign capital. So we wanted to encourage more and more domestic capital to come into the startup ecosystem. That is why we started Rupee Fund. Both our funds in Exfinity are Rupee funds. We raise money mainly from HNIs, family offices, and domestic financial institutions. We are also working with the government to figure out any long-term money can come from fee of insurance companies in India. Because unless we create a vibrant domestic capital coming into the startup ecosystem, we are not going to be highly successful.
For our viewers then, Bala, your advice in terms of B2B versus B2C and what they should perhaps be looking at, what would you advise?
I think B2C companies require a lot of capital because you are consumer facing, you have to spend a lot of money in marketing. And it requires larger paychecks. I mean, you need large funds like SoftBank to come and support you. And but B2B companies consume lesser capital. And also the multiplier effect when you exit is higher in B2B than B2C. And B2C also has got a long gestation period when you get an exit. So we believe that B2B capital or less capital consuming and higher returns. That is why we focus on B2B.
You are, of course, one of India's best-known CFOs, Bala. I want you to talk about the fact that the role of the CFO in India today is changing. For a small business which is watching this interview, what should they keep in mind about how that role is changing and how to really approach the way the finance function is now being done?
CFO role is a very important role in any organization because ultimately he has to keep the company true and he also need to ensure that the company's value system is intact. So a CFO is not just a bookkeeper today. He is more a macro person. He supports the CEO. He has to understand the business. He need to be articulate. He need to build a trust with investors, customers, employees. So he should have a ability to connect the macro and micro. So I think CFO role has become much more important in any organization today. That's why globally, if you look at any organization, when there is a transition to a new CEO, CFO is considered as the most potential person to fill that role.
For young entrepreneurs who are watching this interview, what are your tips in terms of how you get a business to thrive?
Entrepreneurs should always focus on building businesses which are long-term, which has got huge potential, and it should be global. You don't build a product only for India. Your product should be for global markets because India is a great market, consumer market, but ultimately when you want to derive higher degree of value for your technology, it has to be accepted globally. So entrepreneur should build global products. It should be flexible. I mean, there is a change in the marketplace. You should change your pivot to your idea and get into a new mode. And you should also attract good talent. Hiring good talent is the most important factor for the startup ecosystem. You should always hire talent better than you so that you build a good company in the long term.
One last question, Bala. For someone who's pitching to raise funds from a venture capital fund, what are the biggest mistakes you're seeing them making? What would you like for them to know through this interview?
No, I think ultimately it's about storytelling. Most of the entrepreneurs have got a good idea about what they want to do. They build a good product, but the articulation of that idea is very, very important. That's why I keep saying that storytelling is the most important attribute for any entrepreneur.
All right, V. Balakrishnan, thanks very much for your time here on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's slip into a short break. On the other side, Homelane, based out of Bengaluru, is in focus tonight. We'll tell you what the company is doing. We'll give you insights into the furniture market. That's when we come back. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Our focus tonight on small giants is on Homelane. In our first interview tonight, we were talking about how technology is really disrupting what's happening when it comes to most businesses here in the country. Let's take a deeper dive as far as what's happening on the online furniture market with the Bengaluru-based Homelane. Shreya Sarvadikari traveled to Bengaluru to catch up with the company to understand what they're doing when it comes to this segment, how the market really is evolving, and their insights for entrepreneurs watching this interview. Take a listen.
Srikant, lovely to have you on Leaders of Tomorrow. You started Homelane in the year 2014. What led you to start it, and how's the journey been so far for you?
No, first of all, thanks Shreya for having me on the show. Yeah, it's been a hectic 5 years. I set out to try and organize an industry which has been traditionally unorganized for many, many hundreds of years, because I thought that the customer really needed a viable alternative. In the beginning, you know, I didn't know what I'd gotten myself into pretty much for the first 6 months, 9 months. But after that, slowly some of the truth started figuring it out, and I think we've come a long way. Today, we deliver more than 15 homes a day, have more than 1,000 people. We are present in about 7 cities, and we operate about 16 experience centers. More importantly, we have served more than 6,000 customers across India.
Lovely. Moving ahead, you know, you were talking about this being a very unorganized sector, and there is also an information asymmetry when it comes to the buyer and the seller. How are you bridging that gap?
So you hit it bang on when you're saying that there's information asymmetry, because in this industry what happens is it's a very technical purchase. You'll start getting jargon thrown at you when you're going to buy this purchase. So you'll hear stuff like MDF, PLPB, and you know, BWP, which you've never heard before. You probably will never hear it again in your life, but you know, you'll have to figure out all this jargon. A. B, it's a very high ticket size. So even a small mistake can cost you a lot of money and a lot of heartache. And this is a typical industry where the seller knows everything and the buyer knows next to nothing. So one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to educate the customer. We said, you know, if we educate the customer, that itself will raise the trust levels in the customer on the provider, whoever is educating him. And we said, let's be the one to do that. 1. 2, we said that we would be transparent with the customer. Now, for example, if we take this wardrobe here, and this is made of MDF. If you say, okay, change the MDF to particle board and tell me how much it costs, I should be able to tell you within a second. Why should it take me 1 week to come back to you for? That can only be done using software. That can only be done using a platform. So what we decided to do is we decided to build our own platform. We call it Spacecraft. It's basically a virtual collaboration platform between designers and customers, where designers can virtually put together your interior design. It's like pretty much like clicking Lego blocks together, very transparently in front of the customer, collaborating with the customer. So any change that they make, you actually see it happening live, and you know what you're paying for. Whether it's more or less, you know what you're paying for. So that has really helped us. We released this product about 3 years ago, and for the last 2.5 years ago, and for the last 2.5 years, our growth has really been excellent.
You were talking about the experience centers you have. You have about 16 experience centers across India, and majorly in the tier 1 cities. So what are your plans of venturing into tier 2 cities?
So we've currently not even gone deep into all the tier 1 cities. We are still we have about approximately 2 experience centers per city right now. We plan to go far more deeper into each city that we are present in. So, but having said that, In 2020, we definitely plan to go to tier 2 cities. Sometime in the second quarter of next calendar year is when we are planning to go to tier 2 cities, and we are already finalized a couple of locations that we are going to go to. I believe that the aspiration in the tier 2 cities is equal, if not more. I think the delivery platforms like Zomato or Swiggy or anybody like that has already proven, or even Amazon, Flipkart have proven that a lot of volume can come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities too. We also believe that home, being very emotionally connected to the customer, people will want to spend if they are offered a branded alternative.
Well, your success story speaks in your growth numbers. You've had a 250% year-on-year growth,
Yep.
and you are aiming at a revenue of rupees 500 crore this year. How are you aiming at doing that?
So for us, the experience center is a very core part of the expansion strategy. We have a franchisee model, so the one that we are sitting in here is run actually by a franchisee of ours. 100% of our experience centers are run by are owned by franchisees, and they are run by us. And that's really the expansion strategy for us. So we look at a great location, and we put up experience centers which are conveniently accessible to customers, and we use digital marketing to drive customers to those experience centers and meet with our great designers that we have. That is really a simple strategy that we have been following, which has worked for us. Our products are, I believe, top of the line in terms of quality, and with our 45-day delivery guarantee, which has really struck a chord with customers. I think they will find that balance between the price and value that they would be looking at.
Well, we've seen the government taking initiatives towards the home solutions, the retail home furniture industry. Do you think that enough is being done on the part of the government, or you see more which needs to be done?
You know, as an entrepreneur, I'll never say anything is enough. But having said that, I think for us, GST was a big help. Even though it could have been implemented better, in my opinion. I think the intent of GST and the final impact that it has had has helped the organized industry, our industry at least, for sure. Because what it's done is a lot of people who are not under the purview of tax, it's kind of brought them under tax. And because of that, the only tax that they probably evade is on the labor and not on the supply itself. And typically in our industry, it's a 70-30 kind of a combination. So 70% is product cost and 30% is labor cost. So it's kind of closed the gap, so to speak, between that. So that's been very good. I think Make in India has helped. I think the SOPs that the manufacturers get, and we use a lot of manufacturers for our manufacturing in India, has been great, and that's been very, very useful. The third thing that's been good is actually the startup programs. I think especially in the last 6 months to 9 months, the proactive steps that have been taken in saying that people don't have to comply for a certain period of time, because you're worried about growth in the initial stages of the company. If you're tying them down by getting them to do too many things, then it can actually hinder growth. I think some of those things that the government's doing has been great. However, I do think there's a lot more to be done. I think we need to compare ourselves to manufacturing superpowers and try and imbibe some of those stuff if we really need to be great, or even close to being great in any industry in manufacturing, especially in our industry, because it's a complicated manufacturing process. It's not very simple.
Srikant, you've raised 3 rounds of funding and a total of $30 million. So how have you used those funds in your business? And it's a 2-part question. What are your plans of raising more funds?
Sure. So I'll answer the second one. It's easier to answer. So we probably will raise some money in the future. We've been unit profitable now for the last more than 1.5 years. So we plan to use whatever money that we raise, hopefully in the future, for expansion, grow into other cities and grow deeper into the cities that we are in. So that's really the second question answered first. The first one is the 30 million that we've raised across 3 rounds so far have primarily gone in 2 or 3 areas. One, it's gone in setting up technology. I think technology has been the differentiating factor between what we offer and what anybody else offers, and we've spent a lot of money doing that. The second one has been in setting up infrastructure and logistics, basically supply chain for the complete project network. Ours is a complicated projects business. We need to have a very robust supply chain which can actually deliver 15 homes as of now, 30 homes hopefully a few months from now, and so on and so forth, every day like clockwork. So if we need to do that, then we need to have a very, very strong and robust supply chain. So we've spent quite a bit of money in getting that up and running. Obviously, the third one and the last one is something that we have done, and we've built a brand. So we've used some of the money and we've built a brand both online and offline. We've used newsprint, we've used SEM, etc. to actually build Homelane, turn Homelane into a brand, and so that people hear about us more, and at least when people interact with us, they know that they're interacting with one of the larger brands in India. So these are the areas where we've actually spent the money.
Srikant, once again, thank you very much for giving your time on Leaders of Tomorrow.
Thanks so much for having me. It was wonderful talking to you. Thanks.
That's all we could manage to pack into the show tonight. But as we're ending, I do want to talk about something that we here at the Leaders of Tomorrow are very excited by and have been working very closely with OddUp, the most trusted platform when it comes to anything to do with analysis as far as startups, their future trends, evaluation, etc. is concerned. This is a weekly in-depth fact capsule that brings you all the information that you need to know about the hottest startups. This week, we're putting the spotlight on the top 5 gainers for the past week. Take a look.
Here are the top 5 gainers of the past week. This data is plotted as of January 7, 2020. First on the list is Mumbai-based finance startup Mintifi, which showed an increased return of 49.38%. Also based in Mumbai, education startup Topper is the second company on our list and showed an increase of 4.02%. New Delhi-based food and beverage startup Bira 91 showed an increased return of 3.89%. Also based out of New Delhi, finance startup ClearTax showed an increase of 2.82%. And finally, Bengaluru-based transportation startup Ather Energy showed an increase of 0.70%. That's a wrap-up of our OddUp India 100 Index for this week. We'll continue to bring you the most in-depth content on the startup space week after week, right here on Leaders of Tomorrow.